Good evening, Montreal. This is Beryl Wiseman, editor of the Suburban. My colleagues Anthony Bodempart, features editor, Mark Littbetter, sports editor, and Mike Cohen with everything you need to know about entertainment and society news. Before we get into the main story of the week, let me invite you again to go to and pick up your Suburban at nearly 1,000 depots. Major stories: Superior Court Justice extending the injunction against anti-Israel protests. We've got great coverage of the 200 years of the St. Patrick's Day Parade. An exclusive interview with Melissa Landsman, deputy leader of the Federal Conservative Party. CSL residents who are demanding action on potential rent evictions is becoming a big issue all over town, but it's now hit dead center in the West End. Lakeshore General Hospital nurses suspended. Local groups are calling for action on domestic violence and firearms. And we're going to be talking with Joel Chashu later on the monument to Queen Isabella and why it's taken so long to get this monument down. But the first issue we're going to tackle is what happened in Ottawa this week. And I urge you to go to read my op-ed on Liberal policy on this NDP motion. This was not this Prime Minister's finest moment. In fact, it was a disgusting moment. This Prime Minister promised a free vote on the NDP motion with his cabinet voting against it. He lied. He promised that this would not be binding, and immediately the next day suspended arms sales to Israel. What is interesting about that is that Israel only buys $21 million of components from Canada, whereas Canada buys $1 billion a year from Israel for equipment to protect our sailors, our Navy personnel, generally our fighter pilots, and our soldiers. He said that this was a last-minute compromise. Also a lie. Alexandre Boulris, the NDP MP from Rosemont Petit Petrie, told RDI in a long interview that they were consulting all day, and he was on the phone taking instructions from some group that he called Palestinian Muslims in Montreal to see if they were happy with the amendments. Trudeau broke parliamentary rules by bringing in the amendment after debate closed. Many people felt this kind of action, merely to support his popularity among the Muslim population and also with the NDP coalition, would give license to anti-Semites. By the next day, Serge Chaplot, the cartoonist for La Presse, came out with what is now notorious cartoon of Benjamin Netanyahu as this vampire from the Nosferatu movie of 1920, but that trope was used by Julius Streicher and Der Stürmer for 12 years of Nazi regime as the trope, changing faces to attack Jews. Our first guest is Mayor Jeremy Levi of Hampstead, who has been up front on the issue of anti-Semitism, has passed so many important bylaws and laws in his municipality on everything from trespass, assault, how protests are to be conducted. And yesterday, his posts about the Chaplot cartoon went viral, reaching about 1 million hits. Jeremy Levi, welcome.
Hi, Beryl. Thanks for having me.
It's been an interesting 24 hours for you.
It's been an interesting 5-6 months, but the last 24, 36 hours have really been the icing on the cake. This is a Canada that, quite frankly, I don't think my grandparents, who all 4 of my grandparents were born in Canada, this is a Canada now that they would not recognize.
Serge Chaplot said to RDI, people are reading too much into this cartoon, that he was only aware of the 1920 film and was not aware that Streicher and Der Stürmer, the Nazi newspaper, had used that as a trope. What do you have to say to that about a man who's in his late 60s?
Well,
he was not aware.
I think for people who don't understand the significance of what happened are either ignorant or anti-Semitic or both. There's no possible explanation that a man in his 60s who really grew up in an era of post-Holocaust, post all the propaganda, should not have an understanding of what happened. When I posted this on social media, it's a much younger generation on social media now, and a lot of the comments that I'm seeing is, why is it anti-Semitic? And they genuinely don't understand why that was anti-Semitic. There is a level of uneducation.
And if it wasn't for the fact that Streicher and Der Stürmer used it, it would not have been anti-Semitic.
You're probably right. There, it pinched a nerve with 400,000 Canadians of what happened, and the only reason why it went viral to 800,000 people, or close to 1 million people now, is because it's legitimately anti-Semitic. And the problem with Mr. Chapleau, who doesn't understand the consequences of what he did, even if he apologized after the fact, the damage has already been done. I have to commend La Presse for immediately withdrawing it and writing an apology, and the president of La Presse even reached out to me. They handled a very poor decision well. But there are some other leaders out there who have still remained silent on this.
How much do you ascribe? I ascribe a lot to what happened on Monday in Ottawa. How much do you ascribe to what happened with the NDP motion as an opening to this? Or actually what happened the next day with Trudeau ending arms sales?
I'm with you on this. This is just yet another symptom of the mishandling of October 7th and how this has had a spillover effect into a significant increase, unprecedented increase of anti-Semitism in our country, the likes of which my parents have told me they have never seen in this country. It's shameful. People are telling me now, I'm sorry to say, people are telling me now that if Trudeau wins the next election, they will leave Canada. They really need to wake up and understand what's going on.
Frankly, I've been hearing that as well. And your family, just for our listeners to know, your grandmother's cousin was Louis Rezminsky, the first Jewish governor of the Bank of Canada, who in a very famous story was not allowed into the Rideau Club, the exclusive private club in Ottawa, and Lester Pearson. The Prime Minister said, well, if he's not let in, I'm not coming in. And so they broke their rule against Jewish membership.
Yeah, it's an incredible story that really resonates today because it really contrasts the Liberal Party of that generation versus the Liberal Party of this generation. They carry the same name. They are by no means whatsoever the same party. They are a different cloth altogether today. The federal Liberal Party of my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation, is not the party that we see today.
You are planning some interesting proposals to City Council, to your council, on both, again, on demonstrations and on other matters. You want to just brief our viewers on it?
Yes. So when October 7th happened, we went really into crisis mode because we foresaw what was going to happen. So last November, we passed a very rigid nuisance bylaw that would give our public security and the SPVM broad powers to shut down demonstrations that are disruptive, not peaceful, and intimidating. The past few weeks, we've seen the Quebec Superior Court issue some injunctions with regards to manifestations and demonstrations in front of places of worship, and we wanted to incorporate that into our bylaw. And we've had discussions with our outside legal counsel to word it in such a way that it would be constitutional, and we've gotten to that point. The problem is now I went a little bit further and I reached out to the SPVM and the legal counsel of the SPVM to see if they would actually enforce our bylaws. And I'm sad to say, very disappointingly, they said that they would not enforce our bylaws that we put in place.
And that's a problem here in Montreal with what we know now, and I have been told personally, is Mayor Plante's active and sometimes passive signaling to the police to hold back. But I must congratulate you. Jeremy Levi is an example. You can be mayor. You can hold a public position. Doesn't really matter how big it is. Hampstead's only 9,000 people. But the stands he's taken have brought worldwide attention. CNN, BBC, bringing attention on the fact that in Montreal, the only major city in North America where 7 Jewish institutions have been attacked violently, a mayor will not act, nor will she let the police act. So, Jeremy Levi, we salute you, and we hope we're going to have you back, and we're going to see how this initiative rolls out, and we're going to see what the effect of the past 2 days in Ottawa are going to be. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks very much, Beryl. Take care.
Take care. Well, we go from one example of how words, actions of illiberal license can lead to anti-Semitism today to an interesting story that also has anti-Semitic overtures, but from 400 years ago. It's my pleasure to welcome my friend and colleague Joel Chiashu. Joel, tell us about this famous statue.
Yes.
Or not? It's not a statue. It's a monument to Queen Isabella of Spain,
Right.
who in 1492 started the Inquisition, which gave people the choice, particularly Jews.
You're stealing my lead, man.
Oh,
You're
I'm
stealing
sorry.
my
I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. But we both. Well, you live around there. I grew up around there, and we
Right.
always wondered, what the hell is this statue doing here?
Correct. So we're not the only ones, apparently. So, let's do the magic of radio. Let's go back 530 years.
On the magic of radio.
Right. Now, it was in 1492, yes, when Columbus set sail to find a route to India, and he was sponsored by Queen Isabella of Spain and her husband Ferdinand. I think it's Ferdinand of Aragon. But the Queen at the time, this medieval monarch, also sponsored a shindig called the Inquisition. Now, as your listeners will know, that this involved the slaughter and forced conversion and expulsion of hundreds of thousands of Jews and Muslims.
Well, you only got slaughtered if you didn't convert or leave.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, she did give the choice. She gave the
Yes.
hot poker.
She was better than Hitler. She was better than Hitler.
Right, she was better. Right, she gave choices.
Yeah.
Okay, so survivors were given a deadline to convert or leave. Half of Spain's Jews at the time were forcibly converted, and some estimates are up to 100,000 were expelled. Now, in 1958,
and by the way, the converted Jews were given a cute nickname by the Spaniards. They were called Marranos, pigs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Marranos, who went on to practice, some of them to practice their Judaism in secret for centuries.
And sadly, the chief inquisitor, Thomas de Torquemada, was a converted Jew.
I did not know that.
It's a sad fact of history. So how did we get that here in the 1950s?
Right. So 1958, 16 consuls in Montreal, representing Spain and Latin American countries, made a gift to the city to commemorate the anniversary of Columbus's journey and to honor Isabella with a small monument.
So why didn't they honor Columbus?
Well, because Columbus was bankrolled by Isabella, and the street on which where the park is located, where the monument
it's called Isabella.
Is Isabella. That was named in 1912. Now, so
there's been a lot of talk over the past few years of getting rid of this monument. How come it's been taking so long, as you say in your headline?
2 years ago, a resident went to his new city councilor, Sonny Moroz of Snowden District, and said, let's get rid of this thing. And he brought it to council. And the mayor, the new borough mayor, Gracia Katawa, who is Valerie Plante's point person on racism and discrimination, as you know, she welcomed the idea, and she handed off the file to Moroz and said, let's take care of it. Now, fast forward 18 months, nothing's happened. Now, I spoke to Moroz, who's really not...
Moroz is Sonny Moroz. He's a Snowden counselor.
Sonny Moroz, yes, Snowden counselor. He's made 3 formal requests for this to happen over the last 18 months.
To whom?
He said some to the bureaucracy.
Right.
Now, according to him, some staff changes have resulted in files being delayed, and it's currently bogged down in bureaucratic minutia. The mayor's office confirmed that. They're ironing out the final details. They're aware of the offense, of the existence of this. But I spoke with a resident, Mr. David Engel, who was wondering, in the current climate, with what we've seen in Canada and Montreal, particularly this neighborhood, with fire bombings and shootings and aggressive demonstrations in front of synagogues and people being harassed, wouldn't this be a great gesture and an easy gesture to do? Now, I also met a few individuals who said, they're willing to meet up any time with crowbars and sledgehammers and do away with this thing in 5 minutes. Well, they're waiting to see what the city does first.
We're going to keep following this story, and you're going to keep writing about it, and I encourage all the readers to take a look at Joel's great article, Monument to Inaction. Joel Chiashu, thanks very much for being with us.
Awesome. Be well.
Take
Bye.
care. All right, we're going to lighten things up a little with my dear and wonderful friend, very talented friend, Samara O'Gorman. Welcome, Samara O'Gorman.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on your show.
This is Irish Heritage Month. This has been Irish Week. The parade was great. The St. Pat's luncheon was great. Samara is a singer. Samara is a poet. Get her book of poetry. What if the sun died? It's beautiful. And Samara is also our Trinity Queen. She has been the queen of the St. Pat's parade in Montreal, of Hudson, and now of Chateauguay. How was the week for you? How was the month for you?
It's been a thrill, a complete roller coaster, never ending. I mean, the hospitality of all Irish communities never ceases to amaze me, for sure.
Well, your energy has never fails to amaze me. You're everywhere, shaking hands, being nice to everybody. I would find it very hard personally to be nice to everybody. You're smiling. How do you manage this?
I think my past and my theater degree taught me.
Your theater degree, that's very good.
Yeah.
I like that.
For sure.
And how did the poetry come along? Where did that come in?
Sure. So, yes, as you mentioned, I do have a collection of poetry out. If anybody's listening right now, it's called What If the Sun Died? It came out in 2021. And I wrote poetry my whole life as a coping mechanism of sorts. It was just something I did on a daily basis to get me through the day during hardships. Poetry is a wonderful tool to do that because I find when you think everybody's told a story, it's not true. Nobody's told your story in your own words, and poetry is a very powerful tool to do that. And since then, it's been every day I write. I can't drop down the pen now, for sure.
That's wonderful, and you're incredibly talented. And one day it's time for you to do the CD. That hopefully will include the song I asked you about, Gary Owen.
Yes.
How'd you feel when you became when you won the Shadowgate crown and you became the Trinity Queen?
It was surreal because a couple people had told me last autumn. I mean, I've been going to Shadowgate Parade for 8 years now, and the warmth in that community is something that's very special and near and dear to my heart. I live in the West Island, so I'm quite a ways away from Shadowgate, but every year I always make it out there for their parades and their festivities. And a couple of people came up to me and said, "Why don't you run for the Shadowgate crown?" And I said, why not? Why not? And then this whole thing came about with the Trinity Queen, and it's a title that I'm very honored to receive, the first ever one. So I'm going to take the role with dignity, and my goal is to just be a positive and active influence within all three Irish diasporas, Shadowgate, Hudson, and Montreal now, and influence people about Irish heritage and education, for sure.
What's up with you for the future plans? There's always something interesting happening with you.
Yes. Right now, I'm going to jump back onto my academic spring tour of elementary schools. So this winter, I was so privileged to visit different English Montreal school boards and their elementary schools to present a talk that I give called Leading with Your Heart. And the goal is just to inspire and motivate young minds, specifically elementary school students, and teach them about the importance of kindness and anti-bullying and why staying true to yourself is truly the best thing you could do at the end of the day. And I tell them about my career and my story. I also speak a lot about the Irish community, and I let them know how important it is to be proud of where you come from and to be proud of your heritage and your culture. And things like that. And it's been very, very rewarding to see them kind of soak up the messages, these little children. It's been wonderful.
Well, you're quite wonderful, and you keep us abreast of what you do, and we'll cover it. And this has been a historic St. Patrick's Day. It's 200 years. Just to make it clear to our listeners, between the discussion that's been going on with our dear friend Alan Hustack, who wrote The Long Line of Marvel, 200 years of the St. Patrick's Day parade, and some members of the Irish community who said, yeah, but Alan, it's only the 199th parade. And he says, yes, but it's 200 years since the first parade. So it was truly a great week. And the turnout was terrific, even better than last year, the first full one since COVID. And you made it all the more wonderful. Samara O'Gorman, thank you for being with us, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, Swansha.
Thanks very much. And we'll be right back with my colleague Anthony Bonaparte right here on the Suburban Radio Hour on CJD 800. But first, let's check in on traffic.